Hi friends, I'm Luke from TETready.com and we're here to help you study for this new TOEFL Essentials test. This video is all about the describe a photo question on this test, and it looks like this. So the idea behind this task is that you have taken a photo and you've uploaded it to your social media, and now you are describing it to your social media friends. And I think that's quite a unique and kind of interesting way to make this task a bit more fun for you. Of course, the describe a photo question is not new. That's on a lot of tests, but at least on this TOEFL Essentials test, it has some context and it makes it a little bit more interesting. Anyway, in this video, we're going to look at the key points of this question type so you can understand what you've got to do. Then I've prepared a sample answer which I'll show you, and after that I'll give you a practice question or a practice photo you can describe below in the comments, which I will check. Okay, before we jump into the key points, I just want to say that if you're new to this channel, hi, I'm Luke from TETready.com. If you're new, hit that subscribe button and like this video because it really does help me a lot. Okay, well let's jump into the key points of this question type. Okay, so the key points. Like I mentioned, your job is basically to write a social media post about a photo that you have taken. You have to describe the photo to your social media friends. And when you take the test, it looks like this. This is taken from the practice test, which you can find on the ETS website. And let's look closely at the instructions. Okay, let's zoom in. The instructions are the following. You took the following photo. You will post it on your social media. Describe the photo for your social media friends, write complete sentences, and write as much as you can. So that's essentially what you've got to do. You've got to describe a photo to your social media friends. However, you can't just write in like a normal social media way with slang and abbreviations and lots of spelling mistakes. You've got to write it with complete sentences using correct grammar, correct vocabulary, and all that stuff. And you should try to write as much as you can to show off your English, because at the end of the day, this is an English test, so your job is to show how good your English is. So that's the essential part of this question type. Now let's take a look at some other key points. Okay, so this actually falls under the general writing task. You will get one general writing task once on the test. And the task will either be this one, the describe a photo, or it will be the write an email, but not both. So the TOEFL Essentials test is quite different than the original IBT. This test is a mix between general English and academic English. Now, when you take the TOEFL Essentials test, you will get one general writing task. And that task will either be this one, the describe a photo, or it will be write in an email. You won't get both. So actually you might not get this question type at all, but still you've got to prepare for it. The academic writing task is one I'll make a video on later, but basically it's an academic discussion. It's a bit harder because it's academic. This one is general English, so I think it's a bit easier. Okay, let's take a look at the other key points. You have 7 minutes to prepare and write. And since you have 7 minutes, my estimate is that you can write around 80 to 100 words. But of course, if you can, you should try to write more. So that 7 minutes is actually for preparation and writing. You don't get extra time to prepare. The preparation is included within those 7 minutes. And my estimate, like I mentioned, is that you should write between 80 and 100 words, because in 7 minutes, that's about right. But that is just my estimate. Actually, I don't know exactly how many words ETS is looking for, but I think it's around that mark. But of course, if you are able to write more, yeah, go ahead, write as much as you can, as long as your sentences are correct and accurate and all that stuff. Okay, now let's take a look at what you've got to do to get a good score on this question type. Okay then, so what do you need to do in order to get a high score? Well, luckily for us, ETS does mention this in their TOEFL Essentials framework, which is available on their website if you're interested in reading it. If you go to the describe a photo section, it mentions what ETS is looking for. And there are 3 main points. Number 1, is the answer, is the description adequately elaborate, clear, and cohesive? Alright, so elaborate, clear, and cohesive. Basically, are you able to write a good, developed description of the photo? Do you simply go beyond labeling what is in the photo, and do you describe it well and also make a story about what is happening in the photo? And of course, can you do that in a clear and cohesive way? A bit later, I'll show you a sample answer to give you an idea how to do this. Next up, we have, is your answer accurate? And does it use an appropriate use of a range of grammatical structures and vocabulary? Okay, so basically, do you make good, correct sentences, and do you use a mixture of grammatical structures, some simple and some complex? And then, are the words you use in accurate and related to the photo? This kind of stuff. And lastly, does it follow the mechanical conventions of English? So they are looking for spelling, punctuation, and capitalization. So that outline, the criteria that is presented there, is basically the same as on all of the other English exams. Do you write good, developed answers? Do you use good grammar, a range of structures, good vocabulary? And then how is your spelling and punctuation? All of that, of course, is really important to demonstrate that you can write well in English. Okay, so those were the key points done. Now let's take a look at some tips and strategies you can use to help you to write a photo really well on this TOEFL Essentials test. Okay, so I thought about here things you can write about and then some tips to help you write well. So firstly, you can write a kind of a general statement, maybe a general introduction of what is the photo. So what is the photo about? You should also think about how you can describe the actions of the people or the subjects in the photo. So what are they doing? For this, you should use action verbs and probably use the present continuous. Another thing you could think about is describing the location. For this, you can use prepositional phrases such as to the right of, above, in front of, behind. You should also think about speculation. So you don't have to write exactly everything you see in the photo, but rather you can speculate about why something might be happening. Of course, to speculate, you can use lots of language, such as modal verbs like might, may, must, etc. Also, it would be really helpful if you use descriptive language, so think about adjectives and adverbs. Adjectives, of course, describe nouns, and adverbs are useful for describing actions. And just like the criteria said, you should use simple, compound, and complex sentences. So use a range of grammar. And transitional phrases can be used to make your answer smooth and cohesive. Remember, that was on the criteria. Okay, so those are some things you should consider when you're describing your photo. If you keep these things in mind, they'll help you to write your answers longer and of course make them more descriptive, which at the end of the day is your job. It is a describe a photo question. You have to be descriptive. Okay, now let me show you a full example answer. I think this will be helpful because it'll give you a good idea of what the answer should look like. Okay, so this is an example. Let's imagine that this photo was given to you on the test, and remember the instructions at the top. You have to describe it on your social media to your friends. And this is an example that I wrote. I'll just read it out to you now. This photo is of my dad at a soccer game last summer. We went to the game together to watch Brazil play. Even though my dad isn't Brazilian, he's a big fan. That's why he was holding the Brazilian national flag over his head. Right in front of us, there were some fans of the other team, and they were extremely passionate. They even painted their faces red. Although the stadium wasn't completely full, the atmosphere was amazing. We had a great day together, and my dad was delighted that Brazil won. In total, this was 92 words. So that answer was 92 words in total, which I think is plenty long enough for this type of question. And in this full answer, I included some of the important tips or points that I mentioned earlier. So let's take a look at what those points were now. Okay, so firstly, the first sentence, this was an overall or general statement. And it was that this photo is of my dad at a soccer game last summer. I could change it to something like, this image shows my dad at a soccer game last summer, or this is an image of, lots of ways to change this opening statement. But I think it's quite good to have a general statement first. Just to let you know that this man in the photo is not my father, and I didn't take this photo. So that's okay. When you get your photo on the TOEFL Essentials test, you can actually speculate or make a guess or just make something up. You can say it's you or your friend or your father or anyone you want to. So you can make your own story as long as it's related to the photo. Okay, next up, I talked about the action. That's why he was holding the Brazilian national flag over his head. I'm describing the actions of my father or the actions of this man in the photo. Here, right in front of us, this is a prepositional phrase, and I was describing the location of other people in the photo. So I said right in front of us, there were some other fans, and they were extremely passionate. Again, you can use prepositional phrases to describe the location of things in the photo. These two sentences are what are called complex sentences, and I think it's important to try to include some compound or complex sentences in your answers. The rest of my sentences are pretty simple, just these two would be considered complex. And here are some examples of adjectives and adverbs. It's a good idea to include 3, 4, maybe 5 of these throughout your answer. Okay, so that's an example done. Now I'm going to give you a chance to write your own answer. So I'll show you another photo. I want you to write between 80 and 100 words in 7 minutes. Remember to follow some of the guidelines I mentioned earlier. That will help you to write more and to write a better answer. Okay, here's your photo, and don't forget to write your answer in the comments. Okay, so that's it. Well done. How was it? Was it easy or difficult? Let me know below in the comments. And if you did finish this whole video, write "I finished" below in the comments, because I'm always quite curious who actually finishes these long videos. If you want more practice with the TOEFL Essentials test, I recommend you watch this video here or this one here. Okay, that's it from me today. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time. Bye.